Adha for anyone who celebrated yesterday, and I hope you are doing well and stay healthy during this current pandemic. And we are very excited to have everyone attending on our first collaboration webinar between Universitas Unggul and also Kinobi. And let me introduce myself. My name is Cynthia. I will be your Master of Ceremony today. And I hope you guys can enjoy this webinar and gain something insightful, especially on how to kickstart and elevate your career in the most demanded industry, which is FMCG, consulting, banking, and also startup. Before we jump into the webinar with Mr. Hafiz and Mr. Benjamin, I guess Bu Ria can give some opening words. Silakan Bu Ria, terima kasih.
Terima kasih Mbak Cynthia. Baiklah, supaya mungkin Versa juga mungkin menggunakan bahasa Indonesia dulu ya, supaya mungkin mahasiswa juga bisa mengikuti. Baiklah, pertama-tama saya ucapkan Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Saya pertama-tama mau juga ucapkan semoga kita semua dalam keadaan sehat ya, walaupun dengan situasi pandemi. Tapi semua kita tetap dapat beraktivitas walaupun tetap di rumah atau stay home. Dan kita bisa mengikuti webinar saat ini dengan keadaan yang tetap gembira ya, dan juga bisa mengikuti kegiatan dengan baik. Saya juga mau ucapkan kepada yang terhormat yang juga sudah hadir pada pagi hari ini, kepada Mr. Benjamin Wong selaku CEO dan co-founder dari Kinobi. Demikian juga Mr. Hafiz Kasman selaku COO dan co-founder of Kinobi. Selamat datang, dan sebelumnya saya ucapkan juga terima kasih sudah dapat hadir, di mana nantinya akan menjadi narasumber pada pagi hari ini. Begitu ya Mbak Cynthia ya. Dan tentunya saya juga mengucapkan selamat datang kepada yang saya cintai, dan saya juga selalu banggakan seluruh mahasiswa Universitas Unggul yang sudah hadir pada pagi hari ini. Ya, tetap semangat terus dan kita tetap menunggu para peserta yang lainnya yang nanti juga akan segera join. Pada hari ini, seperti yang tadi sudah disampaikan oleh moderator, oleh MC, Mbak Cynthia Veronica, di mana kita akan mengikuti webinar yang akan mengangkat mengenai Kickstart and Elevate Your Career in the Most Demanded Industry, yaitu FMCG, atau mungkin yang kita tahu dengan Consumer Goods, ya, consulting, banking, and startup, ya. Nah, ini menjadi satu hal yang sangat luar biasa karena webinar ini juga terselenggara atas kerjasama Universitas Unggul dan Kinobi. Pada hari ini, kalau sudah dilihat ya tadi, Mr. Benjamin dan Mr. Hafiz ini langsung ya dari Singapura ya, Cynthia ya, kalau saya tidak salah ya. Betul. Jadi mereka benar-benar memberikan waktu ya, ingin berbagi dengan mahasiswa yang ada di sini pada pagi hari ini. Jadi sangat penting untuk kita mendengar bagaimana mahasiswa dapat mempersiapkan karirnya ya. Terutama kita akan membahas, kita akan juga mendengarkan bagaimana kita juga melihat insight dari setiap bidang-bidang atau karir ya yang akan mungkin nanti dipilih oleh mahasiswa, baik itu dari consumer goods ya, consulting, banking, bahkan startup ya. Jadi sangat-sangat banyak hal yang bisa nanti kita dapatkan di sini. Jadi mohon kepada semua mahasiswa, pergunakan kesempatan ini dengan baik ya. Apabila nanti ada kesempatan untuk bertanya, silakan bertanya ya, supaya kalian juga bisa mendapatkan wawasan atau juga pencerahan yang lebih lagi untuk lebih dapat mempersiapkan ketika kalian juga nanti lulus ya dari kuliah. Bahkan kalau saat ini kita juga tahu bahwa program Kampus Merdeka sedang membuka ya, bahkan mungkin selanjutnya akan banyak sekali program magang. Nah, ini menjadi satu acuan bagaimana mahasiswa bisa melihat pilihan-pilihan yang nantinya akan dipilih ya, apakah itu sesuai dengan passion-nya atau dengan bidangnya. Jadi ini saatnya. Jadi silakan mengikuti dengan baik. Saya tidak akan lagi berbicara panjang lebar. Saya akan langsung saja ya kembalikan kepada Mbak Cynthia untuk memulai webinar ini. Terima kasih dari saya dan sekali lagi selamat mengikuti webinar ini. Terima kasih. Silakan Mbak Cynthia.
Terima kasih Bu Ria. Seperti yang tadi udah dibicarakan juga oleh Bu Ria, teman-teman di sini jangan malu. Please share your curiosity and ask your questions during the Q&A session after the webinar. And then I guess without any further ado, we will start the webinar. And what will you learn today? We will, the speaker, which is Hafiz and also Ben, will introduce to 4 exciting industries, and then we'll get you understand what the available roles to get there and learn how to get there, so you can plan your undergraduate life. And maybe there will be your what you will learn today for the rundown. I guess management consulting go first. After that, startups and also banking, and after that will be FMCG, and after that we can also you can also share your curiosity in Q&A session. And jangan malu-malu buat tanya teman-teman, kalian boleh tanya proses rekrutmen, mungkin CV, interview, case interview, atau mungkin gimana cara membuat CV yang bagus untuk bisa lolos di masing-masing industri. So I guess this will be this introduction for the speakers. Maybe Hafiz and Ben can go. Time is yours. Thank you.
Sure. Alright, terima kasih Cynthia, and so terima kasih Buria, as well as mahasiswa yang hadir di today. I will now completely, that's all the bahasa I know, I will now completely switch to English. So I'm very excited. I think we both, myself and Ben, are very excited to be here today to really try to, it's a very big challenge to cover 4 industries in 1.5 hours, but we'll try our best to at least give a teaser into these industries. And it's because also we also come from these industries ourselves. So if I may introduce myself, my name is Hafiz. I'm one of the co-founders here at Kinobi. Previously, I did work in consulting. So I worked in this company called Oliver Wyman, which is a management consulting company that is originally based in the US, but has a very large presence in Southeast Asia, including Singapore and also including Indonesia. So back in Oliver Wyman, I worked across multiple projects around the region, Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, and Bangkok. And I think it was a very exciting time of my life. I was also part of the campus recruitment team for the Singapore office in Oliver Wyman. So I can speak about the consulting interview process that we have, and also that generally the consulting industry has. I also have other experiences in the startup space as well, and I can talk more about it later. Specifically, I worked in both Modalku, which is, I think, one of the largest fintech companies in Indonesia. So I spent some time working under the co-founders there, and it was a very exciting time. I also worked at another startup in Hamlet. So today, I will share as much as possible with you, specifically on the consulting as well as the startup space. Ben, you want to introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, thanks, Hafiz. Salam siang, everyone. I think I need to also learn my bahasa properly. Yeah, so anyway, just thank you so much to Unggul for inviting us. And I just want to share a bit more about myself. Previously, I came from Shopee, and I was one of the founding members of the Shopee Mall, as well as the regional brand partnerships team. So I covered Indonesia as one of my portfolio. So I used to cover FMCG as well as electronics. So I covered L'Oreal, Unilever, as well as Huawei, the phone brand. So I did several campaigns when I was at Shopee. Apart from that, I came from finance. I was in a multi-family office called Elvarium, which was around a $20 billion asset management firm. And I used to do investments in real estate as well as in late stage tech companies. And prior to that, I was in Bering. So that was where I did more real estate. Yeah, so excited to talk to you and share more with you about the various industries.
Thank you so much, Ben. Now, before I start before I start with the presentation, I really want to understand today's audience a bit more, right? And I just want to do something very quick and very fun. So hopefully it's a bit more interactive, right? And we really can cater the session today to the audience. So if I may ask, if you have to pick one of these pathways, right? To the audience, if you have to pick one of these pathways, which one would you pick? Consultant, startup, banking, or FMCG? And I want all of you to type in the chat as much as possible. Which one would be your most desired pathway? So, ya, jangan malu-malu ya. All right, consultant, FMCG. Okay. Consultant, itu aja ya. How about the rest? I think everyone here took a very big step in participating and attending the session. So to make it even more productive, I hope that everyone can also interact as well. You know, Kak Irin, Kak Irfan, Kak Joko, what are your interested pathways? There's a reason why all of you are here. It will be very interesting to find out what your pathways are. Anyone else? No one else? Okay, seems like FMCG and consulting are the most interesting ones so far. Okay lah, maybe pagi ini banyak yang malu-malu ya. So we'll try as much as possible to move on. But I also understanding that maybe we give a bit more time to consulting and FMCG. Okay. All right. So I'll start with consulting first. So again, we'll try to cover one topic for 15 minutes very quickly, and then we go for Q&A later on. So what is management consulting? So management consulting really is, they are commonly known as doctors for businesses. So basically, being a management consultant, what you do is you are a jack of all trades problem solver for large multinational companies. And management consultants typically engage with C-suite level executive or C-suite direct reports. Okay, there are a couple of key definitions here that you need to take note of. One is that it's a jack of all trades problem solver, meaning you can be doing multiple industries, multiple project types at any point of time. Okay? It's very open, what we call very open and very open and very widespread. You're not going to be specializing in anything anytime soon as a management consultant. Second is that you are working with large multinational companies. So typically, when someone talks about management consulting, you'll be working for really large companies. And in the case of Indonesia, it is all the conglomerates, the state-owned enterprise, and as well as even the multinational corporations with presence in Indonesia. So that's the second part. And the third part is that it's very exciting because you actually work with the C-level executives. So you're talking about the CEO, the director, the commissioner of the company. Either that or the people reporting directly to the commissioners, like the vice presidents in the company. So it's a very exciting role. And these are typically the type of management consulting firms. So kebanyakan yang many of you have heard of MBB, I think. So for especially those who are interested in consulting. So MBB stands for the McKinsey, Boston Consulting Group, and Bain & Company. These are the top three management consulting firms in globally, actually. And even in Indonesia, these three are the most, what people would say, the most prestigious and hardest to get in. They're also the largest in terms of number of people as well. So that's one type of consulting firm. The second type of consulting firm is the other global top tier consulting firms as well. These three specifically have presence also in Indonesia. So Accenture, Oliver Wyman, Kearney. These three do hire Indonesian undergrads, and they have bases and branches here in Indonesia. Last but not least is the big four accounting firms, which have consulting arms. So for those of you who are not familiar, in accounting, there are four large global accounting firms. So PwC, Deloitte, EY, as well as KPMG. And all four of them actually have consulting arms as well. So they not only do accounting, but they also do consulting, and people also, these will also be considered as management consulting. So what then do consultants work on? Okay, so as a fresh graduate, let's say out of SA Unggul, if you do work in a consulting firm, you typically start off as a generalist, and you can be working on a wide array of topics. So it's very interesting because, okay, so what do I mean by wide array of topics? You can be either working for different industries. So if you see here on the screen, in blue, these are all different industries. Or you could be working on any type of projects. So on the left here in orange is the type of projects. So you can be doing, say, for example, today you'll be doing financial services, market entry for a financial services company. For example, an example type of this would be BCA might be hiring you to help its market entry into maybe the Philippines, right? That will be a very interesting project to work on. And then 1 month from now, that project ends, you might be working in the public sector, potentially for one of the ministries in Indonesia for a 5-year strategy, maybe the tourism ministry for a 5-year strategy for tourism industry in Indonesia. So basically it could be anything. It depends on the company and what the projects are available. But as a fresh graduate, the first few years, you may land projects across any of these boxes. And that is really what makes things exciting as a consultant. But that being said, because it's very exciting and it's very prestigious, the things that management consulting firms look for the requirements are very high and the requirements are very steep. So if you look at just any of the consulting firms for you will realize that they are very vague. So I'm here today, I'll try to translate them into more concrete examples for all of you, especially if you want to build your career in consulting. So really what they're looking for is 4 different aspects, broad buckets. Obviously, each consulting company has its own criteria, but if I were to compile and generalize the criteria for consulting industry, it is 4 things. One is teamwork and leadership. So meaning, can you influence others? Can you succeed in teams? Right? It's super important because in a consulting firm, you are not working alone. You are working in a small teams always whenever you do projects for clients. And you are always requiring, because like I mentioned, you are working on different projects every time. What that means is your project teams also change every time, which means that you definitely need a lot of skills related to being able to influence others and succeeding in teams and have a track record of succeeding in different teams. The second part is problem solving and analysis, right? So these are C-level, commissioner level, director level clients that you have. And the reason why they hire you is to solve a problem that they need help solving, right? So which means that problems are probably difficult. And which means that it takes a lot of, you will need to be able to contribute fruitfully to solving those problems. So they look out for a history of students solving very complex problems, and also your passion for solving problems. So not only can you solve problems, but you have some sort of track record and passion for solving multiple problems, right? So I think that's what they're looking out for. Third is organization and execution. So basically, the idea here is that when you do projects, they are typically very difficult projects and they need to be done in a short amount of time. This means that you cannot do everything. You need to very much prioritize what's important versus what's not, and then make sure that you follow the timeline that you set at the start of the project. Right. So for example, let's say the Ministry of Tourism in Indonesia is asking for a 5-year strategy, and it's supposed to be done in 1.5 months with a team of 4 people, right? It is going to be very difficult because if you think about it, the problem is so huge. What tourism? Like what aspects of tourism do they need to focus on? It cannot be all aspects, because if it's all aspects, then it's going to be hard to cover. There's tourism within Indonesia. There's tourism related to global travelers into Indonesia. There's tourism also related to recreational versus maybe healthcare tourism. There's really multiple aspects. You need to be able to then focus on what's most important. So yeah, these are very huge tasks that are given to small teams with a limited time frame. You need to be able to execute them. Last but not least is drive and determination. This is a tough job, right? It's a tough job with long working hours, very unpredictable timelines, very high pressure, very unpredictable stakeholders that may or may not be nice to you. And you have to be able to live with that for the next few years. So that means your resume needs to be able to display that you can handle the pressure. Yeah, so there's a reason why this is a prestigious and hard to get role. It's because it's a difficult role also. A lot of people actually quit the consulting within 1 or 2 years because they are not able to keep up with the pressure. So that being said, in one small nutshell, what can you do today for undergrads today to build your way towards consulting? Number one is build consulting experience, right? Join consulting clubs if you have exposure to them, either in ESA Unggul or those national consulting clubs. Join case competitions. So like I said, one of the criteria is the passion for solving problems, right? So if you can show that you participate in like 3, 4, 5 case competitions, it shows that you are very interested in solving problems, and that's what consulting firms like to see. Otherwise, you should also win some case competitions because again, what they're looking out for is both passion as well as the ability to solve the problems themselves. So that's also important. The second is be competitive, right? Like I said, so this is a very prestigious role where really there may be about 5,000 students across Indonesia that's interested in consulting, but the consulting industry only hires 50. There's a 1% acceptance rate. So if you are able to signal, right, to the interviewer that you are top of your class, top of your university, that would be great. So if you how you can signal is if you can get internships at competitive places already. So for example, the unicorn internships like Gojek, Tokopedia, Traveloka, then that could be one sign of signaling. The second sign of signaling is if you get accepted into competitive organizations or scholarships. Right, an example would be internet.id for those of you who are familiar. It could be 180-degree consulting. It could be Students X CEO. A couple of them out there. This will signal that you are actually part of a group that is highly ambitious. Another one would be scholarships. So that's the Young Leaders for Indonesia, for example, or XLFL, for those who are familiar as well. These form signaling and indicators that you are top of your class, and that's exactly what consulting firms really look for. Just because it's very competitive and there's not a lot of positions in the industry. Last but not least is optional but highly valued as well, right? So be interesting. So a lot of people, in addition to having consulting experience, being competitive, they're also very interesting, right? So they either, they create their own social movement or social initiatives, and they're the founder or president or CEO of that social initiative. I've seen so many of these types actually get into McKinsey and Bain in Indonesia. So that could help you, or you could have, some of my colleagues in Oliver Wyman have other interesting things, such as they play competitive sports, or they they create a publication and published it, and it was recognized globally. So things like that. Obviously, this is a high bar to reach. It's already very difficult to build consulting experience and be competitive, but it helps. In reality, in the competitive space, this does help. So that's the 15, I think I exceeded, but that's a bit more than 15 minutes on consulting. We typically would take the questions at the end, but if you already have questions right now, please note it down in the chat here so that we can address it later on. Okay, so I'll spend the next 15 minutes now talking about the next industry, which is the startup space. From what I sense, enggak ramai orang yang interested in startups in this chat. So I'll try to be quicker here than consulting. So what is startups? So a startup is really, can be defined as any fast-growing company that rely heavily on new technology and business models to disrupt traditional industries. Very simple. So anything on your mobile app right now probably is built by a startup, especially the ones that you use, today, the most regularly. In Indonesia, these are basically the landscape of startups, right? So you have your unicorns, right? There's Gojek, Tokopedia, Bukalapak, Traveloka. Grab could also be considered as a startup that is very heavily present and hiring in Indonesia. So these are your unicorns. Then there will be the other tier called the Sunni. So unicorn, for those that don't know, companies with a valuation of $1 billion US. Yeah. So these are really, really large companies that have grown, and especially in Indonesia, these are the 4-5 top companies. Then there's this other definition called Sunicorns. So it's basically soon to be unicorns, which are also equally large, equally as competitive to get in, but also equally as exciting as the unicorns also. So here you have Ruang Guru, Halo Dokter, Sociola, Modalku, Akulaku, quite a few varying across now the fintech and edtech and healthcare space. Then there are other companies that are below here who are also very fast growing, but maybe not as big yet, right? So these are those companies that are more recent and have only emerged over the past 2 or 3 years. You have Buku Warung, Pinhome, Ralali, Payfast, Koala. These are also very interesting startups. So really, this is the landscape. Obviously, there are really dozens more startups, right? Kinobi also is a startup. Dozens more startups in Indonesia. But I guess the main question for those of you who always think, oh, you want to go into startup space, what exactly is it there? Right? Because startup is very broad. Yeah, there's like hundreds of roles in any given startup. So I'm trying to simplify it as much as possible. What are the roles available in a startup? So again, same diagram, right? So in terms of industry, it's either fintech, transport, travel, banking, healthcare, education. For most startups, they are only in one industry, right? So for instance, Buku Warung is fintech, Bukalapak is travel, and I think that's quite clear. For some of the unicorn startups, they do have more than one industry. Right? So for instance, Gojek has transport, fintech, so does Grab, and sometimes I think they are also going into travel pretty soon. So there are most startups have one industry, some startups have multiple industries. But let's look at the specializations, and these are the general roles that's available in a startup. These are definitely not comprehensive, but just gives an idea of what are the roles there. So there's tech, right? So under tech, for those of you in computer science here, there's software engineering. It's not comprehensive, right? So software engineering has full stack, back end, front end, etc. But software engineering is one, and then there's also QA, which is quality assurance. There's product that will fall under. There's two types of product. There's product management, which is more of a team lead type of role, and then there's also a UI UX designer or researcher, which is more of a experience design, talking to users and getting feedback type of role. There's also business development, which is under that, there's sales, there's customer experience and success, there's partnerships and account management, and then there's marketing. Typically, when you always say when you want to go into a startup, you typically choose which specialization you want to build on. So in building your career, you typically focus on building on specializations. So it's not enough to say, hey, I want to work in a startup. You need to be able to say, what value can I bring in the startup in the first place? And you need to pick an entry point as to where you want to start. So if you're interested in marketing, maybe it's marketing in a startup. If you're interested in sales, then sales in a startup. And when you build your career, you typically, you just pick one role. You don't do multiple roles. You pick one role, and then maybe after 2 to 3 years, it expands to 2 roles. And then after 2 to 3 more years, then you will be in charge of a team with multiple roles. But you always start with only one role. So it's not like consulting, right? Consulting is anything under the box you will be assigned to. Every month it will change. So for now, for startups, you pick one entry point and you expand those roles. You can definitely change industry to industry. So for instance, this year I worked 2 years as a growth marketer at Bukalapak. Next 2 years I work as a growth marketer at Ruang Guru. That is possible. You can change industries, but your specialization typically doesn't change. So just know that. What do startup firms typically look out for? So again, try to put it in 4 things. One is the hustle mentality, right? So hustle basically is just do it, right? And you achieve impact in a short amount of time. Second is problem identifying. So it's not exactly problem solving, let's say, but can you proactively identify problems and then suggest solutions to quickly solve them? Very important. Startup has very little people, right? The manager is not going to always point out what you need to do. You need to point out what you need to do, or you need to point out what the team need to do. So that's problem identifying. Third is organization and execution. Can you plan your work effectively, right? Even if there are more than 10 things to do, can you execute against goals set, even if they're then last but not least is teamwork and communication. So again, can you communicate well with others? Are you easily likable and can fit easily into any team? So these are the rough traits. And then last but not least is, okay, for undergraduates here, if you are interested in joining a startup, then how can you start? First, build the startup experience, right? So if you're interested in a startup as a full-time after graduation, definitely join an early stage Series A, Series B type of startups, preferably in the specialization that you want to be. When in marketing, start with marketing. Right? Pick a specialization. It's very important. Second is be a side hustler yourself. Right? So work on new and interesting projects by yourself or with your friends and aim to achieve impact in a short amount of time. Right? This is super important skill because this is exactly what you need to do in a startup. And then third is like show interest in the scene, right? So upskill in the latest trends and depending on your specialization. So if you want to go for social media marketing, you need to be able to build some expertise in the new technologies like TikTok, right? The new Instagram algorithms, show that you can do it. And this is especially important in a startup because these are the skills they're looking for, not the old stuff. Then second, or maybe if you're interested in product management, there's also a relatively new role in general. So if you can show that you have done courses in product management, that's also quite good. So I'll stop there. Before I move on to the third pathway, maybe I can just open up the floor to any questions. If there's any question from anyone in the room.
Ya, untuk teman-teman di sini mungkin kita di 2 pathway yang pertama dulu, which is consulting and startup. Kalau teman-teman mau ada pertanyaan, boleh langsung chat aja di chat box. Nanti moderatornya aku bakal bantu to translate it. Jadi boleh pakai bahasa Indonesia, boleh pakai bahasa Inggris, boleh up to you guys. And then kalau misalnya teman-teman langsung pengen nanya ke Hafiz, you can just raise hand. You can also unmute your mic and then langsung nanya aja. Ayo nih teman-teman, kayaknya sekarang lagi hype banget ya Kampus Merdeka, which is saya sendiri juga banyak apply di kampus Merdeka, terus rata-rata perusahaannya juga kan ada yang startup kayak Tokopedia, Shopee, and then mungkin juga ada kayak mungkin magang yang lain yang dibuka di LinkedIn. Nah, itu mungkin boleh banget nih teman-teman kalau pengen nanya kira-kira apa aja mungkin tips and triknya buat lolos ke maybe interview. Maybe you guys can ask also what type of interview, mungkin gimana cara jawab pertanyaan-pertanyaan interview, mungkin untuk consulting atau mungkin startup. Boleh banget nih teman-teman langsung raise hand, unmute mic-nya aja, atau langsung chat. Thank you.
Ya, untuk mahasiswa, ayo jangan malu ya, nggak apa-apa. Mungkin karena ini juga menjadi satu hal yang penting, jadi tetap bertanya ya, tidak masalah, karena walaupun dengan bahasa Inggris nanti akan dibantu dengan Mbak Cynthia. Tapi mungkin saya boleh memberikan pertanyaan, boleh ya Mbak Cynthia ya, dengan Hafiz ya?
Ya, bisa.
Thank you, Hafiz. It's very clear your explanation. So, hopefully our students really can get the insight of this key topic, yeah. That you all. So, I have just a question that maybe these days is very important to our students to understand. So, how can we found out other fields that we currently select? You know, if there, for example, if the students already study in faculty IT, information technology, but in other ways, they have a passion or life in other other field. So how they can find out and choose the right one, because campus Merdeka they have a very many choices. So I think the students could be difficult to find out. But if maybe you can give a hint for our students, how can we get to know or to get find out what you used to be selected? I think it's that's the question, because I hope.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Okay. Thank you so much, Buria, for the question. I feel that there's two parts of the question, right? One is how does a student find out what he or she really wants or is good at, and then two, if it's outside of their current specialty in terms of education, how then do you get out of that specific specialization or experiment outside of that specific specialization? So very interesting. That's a question I think every undergraduate, even myself when I was a first year, second year student, also asked myself. Sometimes I ask myself right now whether I'm in the right specialization. But yeah, so I think first is how do you explore and find out, right? And I think all of you here have taken the right step today to come to this webinar. This is exactly how you find out how it's like working in the different industries and seeing which exactly stands out to you, you know, which part of the webinar that you pay extra attention to. You know, is it the startup one? Is it a banking one? You know, that automatically tells you exactly if you are ever interested in stepping out. Obviously, there are a lot of resources out there online where you can really spend some time to get an insight into the different industries as well. After this session, we can explain more about Kinobi and how our platform works. We have a lot of courses as well that gives you a day free and a day in a life insights into the different roles. So first one, to explore, you just need to really find out the resources out there. Use Kinobi's platform, use Google also. You can pretty much search, definitely make a effort in finding out exactly what could be interesting to you. Then the question is, so once you're interested in something, then how do you get out, especially if you don't study that? So if you're Poria, you mentioned if you're a computer science student, but maybe you're interested in marketing, right? How do you get out of that? It's a very good question. Obviously, the the very simple way is to try to find an internship in that space, right? But I understand that a lot of internships sometimes ask for previous experience already. So then how do you, as a computer science student, even get the first internship, right? So I think that's really a main blocker for a lot of people here. There are a couple of ways to do it, right? One is to do your own side hustle in the specific field that you are interested in. So I even know, you know, someone from computer science has their own blog, perhaps, on just talking about and reflecting on case studies on marketing. That's one way where you can build experience without actually working for, like, interning for anyone. So there's no dependency, right? You can build, anyone in this webinar today can already start writing a blog on marketing. Then you can also, once you write a blog on marketing, after 4 to 5 posts, you can put this in your resume saying that, hey, you are writing this blog on marketing. This is a signal to show your employers that you have an serious interest in marketing, that you're not just say that you're interested, but you're actually doing something. You could also, things I've seen done before is you could also, you know, build your own side hustle in terms of maybe making a small shop run by Instagram. That's also another way to display your marketing skills there. So you need to be able to come up with creative ways like this to really show that you are interested in that specific field. Otherwise, yes, Buria, you're completely right. It's very difficult for you to get out of this mold. You need to find creative ways to get out. Another way, other than side hustles, is to join organizations. Right, so joining organizations can be said to be easier actually than joining internships. So yeah, again, if you're interested in, say, consulting, then you can join consulting clubs that are available to you. Examples of a consulting club could be 180-degree consulting. So yeah, join those clubs or join those case competitions as well. So then the third one is join case competition. So if you're interested in marketing, join a marketing hackathon. If you're interested in consulting, join a consulting case competition. This is also very low barrier to entry. Just find out what the case competitions are available today and submit. And that's all you need. Again, once you've participated in this, you can put it in your resume. So imagine in just 1 month, you could be participating in 3 marketing case competitions, and maybe you build your blog. Your resume as a computer science student, as an example, now suddenly becomes a marketing resume. And now you gives you the right time, the right amount of experience to go to Campus Merdeka and apply for marketing internship roles. So I hope that answers the question.
Okay, thank you. I think it's very clear, and I hope the students also can understand, because these days we also that the university, especially that what we like to do to our students, to encourage them to keep doing, or just to be to challenge themselves, yeah, to not afraid, just like Hafiz said, just keep doing, and other than they choose what they feel that we are they just do it now, they can do other more other than what they like, or they choose in the future, because Campus Merdeka is very interesting. But as I told before, but the students maybe have a little bit like of what is it, afraid to be uh, unconfident about what they have to choose. That's the problem. So that's why I think it's important to listen to your explanation and your webinar today. So hopefully they get insight more from this webinar. Thank you, Hafiz.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. I think we can. We definitely have a Q&A segment later on also. So this was just a short break. Now I'll leave the time to Ben to continue with banking. And I think what some of you are looking for is definitely FMCG. So take it away, Ben.
Yeah, thanks so much, Hafiz. Okay, just share my screen, and then after we can dive into this. I'll show you the other one. Interesting. Yeah. Can everyone see my screen? Okay, all right, awesome. Okay, anyway, thank you for listening intently to us. I'll just cover the next two parts on banking as well as on FMCG. And I think any questions can leave it to the end. We will definitely answer the questions for you. Right, so on banking itself, why do banks exist, right? So banks is a very simple kind of concept. You know, it sounds very complex and so on. But what a bank really does is that a bank helps someone who wants to start a business by providing the person with money, right? So that's what the person does. So then the bank takes money from people who have money, those who like want to put their money in the bank to save or to invest, and then passes on that money over to people who want to build businesses or to borrow the money. So a bank essentially is a middleman. It allows you to take money from those who have them and give to those who need them. So that essentially is a bank, right? So that is a very basic concept. Everything flows from this. So if you go to a higher understanding of what a bank does, there are a few types of banking. There's like retail banking, there's corporate banking, but they all do the same thing. Retail banking is like taking money from those who have the money to those who need the money, but are people, right? And then corporate banking is the same thing, except they take money from corporates or companies that have the money and then give them to people who need this money. So that's a slight difference between both of these things, at least in this section. So other than that, just want to highlight a few things. So within the banking industry in Indonesia, we have this thing called the buy side as well as the sell side. The buy side itself refers to those people who want to give the money, right? So they are, in a way, they sit on the side of those who give the money, or they sit on the side of those who need the money. So what do I mean by this, right? So let's say if you are a corporation and you want to give money. So think of your firms like insurance companies, like your Great Eastern, your AIA. So you have people who are buying insurance. And when you buy insurance, like let's say a company insurance, they put money inside. And what do they do with this money? This money, what they do is they give to, let's say, a bank, or they manage the money, or they start to invest in other things. So that's where they invest in people who need this money itself. So that's where some of these buy side sits on the side where they are the ones taking the money and then doing something with it, right? So this is where you have like companies like Trimega, Saratoga that actually take in money from what we call investors, and then they invest it into companies like startups and then grow the startup. So just now when you were hearing about how Hafiz was sharing on like Buku Warung, or even for let's say Goto, or even like Bukalapak, etc. So these firms, these are companies that need money, right? They want to grow the company, but they need investors. That's where they get money from people who have the money. So that is like your, maybe Saratoga, it can be an Indo Premier investment that comes in at a later stage and then invest, right? So that is how the thing works. And then when the company makes money, let's say a Bukalapak, it makes money. Then it makes money for investors, they return the money back to the buy side. And that's how the buy side actually eventually makes more money for you, right? So that's in short what the buy side really looks like. In the sell side, how the sell side works is that the sell side usually acts on behalf of people who want to raise money. So let's say if I am a Bukalapak, right, or I am a Goto. So a Goto in this sense would, when Goto was doing the merger between Gojek and Tokopedia, they needed a sell side to come inside, like an investment bank, and say that, hey, this is the finances you need for the next 4 years. How can I structure something that allows you to raise enough money that you can survive for the next 4 years, right? So that is essentially what happened in this case. So you have like Mandiri, your Sinama, Securitas, you have Mire, you have PwC, Avantgarde, Pan-ASEAN coming inside to do such things, helping companies to raise money, right? So if I were to summarize buy side and sell side is those people who have money, right? They have the money, they represent maybe ultra high net worth individuals, or even like insurance companies, and then they invest into companies. The sell side represents the companies who want to raise money, who need the money. So they help the companies with their fundraising, help them with deciding how much money they need. So this is the two parts, main parts of the bank itself. There are other parts also within buy side that go a bit more in depth. So there's asset management, which I mentioned is a bit like the insurance companies. They would actually manage the assets of people who like buy their life plans, etc. And then you have your private equity and your hedge funds. The difference between private equity and hedge funds is that private equity invests in private stocks usually, and then hedge funds invest in your public markets. So to give an example, you would have, let's say right now, let's say nickel trading. Nickel trading in Indonesia is actually quite big, right? So you have hedge funds that invest in these kind of nickel trading and commodities. But your private equity usually does not invest in a commodity trade. Your private equity will invest in the company that has a nickel trading arm, or it is a nickel mine, for example. So there's a slight difference, right, between private equity and hedge funds. So that we cover the buy side, let's go to the sell side. For the sell side itself, you have a lot of investment banking, which I explained. Your sales and trading. Your sales and trading, what it does is that it trades on behalf of the clients and finds out exactly what they need in order to make returns, right? And then equity research supports them by giving the research saying that, hey, this company, it needs like maybe 4 years of cash flow. How much does it need? This is what I project after I build my financial model, right? So this is just a very brief snapshot of what it does. Let's go into the more of the juicy bits. The other part there is a bit boring. So yeah, so now this part here is a bit more interesting. This part here is about industry coverage groups. So if you're in investment banking and if you're in banking itself, you cover usually a sector. So the sector can be oil and gas, utilities, food and agriculture, technology, financial institutions, real estate, etc. Right? So these are some of the firms that cover this, like Pertamina, like Wings, like LSF&A, like FMCG, Telkom Indonesia, Telkomsel. You have your BCA, you have Agung Pomodoro, APG, your Ciputra. You have like Sinamas, your Matahari. All these things all come inside, and you as a banker, you support these companies as they grow, right? So that's what the main function of a banker really is. So then the last part of banking is, how do you be outstanding in banking, right? I think there are 4 ways to be outstanding in banking. So if any one of you here wants to take note of this, the first is that you want to get certifications. So if you want to get certification, the first thing you can go to is to go to Kinovi, because we have the certification for that. You can come to us, we will actually help you with giving you the certificate, and you can take our basic investment banking course or private banking course. So that will give you a basic understanding of what it means to be a banker. Second way, there are a few ways. Second way is the CFA, which is by CFA Institute. There's level 1 to 3. This one is a global recognition. And then you have your WMI by TICMI, which is like a local recognition, which is also a professional certification. And then you have your WPPA, which is here by also TICMI, which is a local recognition as well. And then finally, they have one by RSA or CSA, which is by CSA Institute, which is local recognition. So these are things that you can actually take on board to make sure that you have the requisite certifications needed to enter the firm. Second is, I think this is a bit like what you do in consulting, right? Just now Hafiz was talking about how you do consulting case competitions. It is the same for banking. You want to do case competitions, you get inside because it is very competitive. So case competitions showcase that you are able to have the skill sets and you are able to do it, and also able to convince people that you are able to do the job well, because a case competition is a replication. It's as if you are on the job, right? So they give you a task that is very similar to what you do on the job. They give you the needed requirements, they give you the assumptions, and they give you under time pressure. Can you create these slides and present it? Which is exactly what you do on a day-to-day basis. So if you win these competitions, there's a very high chance that you get into all these other companies, because if you do it properly, it showcases that you understand how to do it. So first one is again the CFA Society's Investment Research Competition from December to March. This is one of the most prestigious, and if you win this, you win national Indonesia. I think you have no problems finding a job. Yeah, and if you win again global ASEAN, even better. I think everyone will start to find you. Right. Then the second is the IDX Research Competition by the regulator, by the exchange. So this is July to August. Next one you have one by the ministry, which is the KPMK's Investment Research. And then you have IIBC by Prasetya Muya. And then there's a PFF by Pajajaran. And then Dynamic by Diponegoro. So these are the ones that you can actually go for in terms of practicing and making sure that you have your requisite abilities to actually get into banking itself. The third way is to have referrals. So referrals is very important in banking because, as you know, in Indonesia, referrals is important for everything. So more important, especially in banking, right? Because banking is only, I think, around 1% or less than 1% of all students go into banking. So it's very competitive, and you want to have someone to support you and assure that you're good. So with that, you also want to know your employer. So just now when I presented the slides on this, I think this is important because it allows you to find out which are the companies you can apply for, whether it's a domestic or regional or boutique or an international firm. But more importantly than this, it allows you to, let's say, go on LinkedIn, try to talk to people who are in these areas. And then hopefully, if you are interesting, they will respond to you. And then they would also give you a coffee chat, right? And then you can talk to them. So important also to know the functions. So like, for example, the industry coverage groups, it's important to know what the companies are that you're servicing, right? Like, for example, if you know that you are doing maybe real estate, you're servicing real estate market. It's good to know who are the players in the real estate market, like Agung, like Ciputra, even like the Riyadis, like having all the different real estate under the different like companies and families in Indonesia. I think these are very important. Also understanding how each of these collaborate with each other. For example, you know, like which companies are similar to which companies? Do they have collaboration? That is also this. Are they under the same family, under the same company? That's also very important, right? Another thing that's also very important to take note of is whether or not, let's say, if you see that there are areas where you can work together. For example, real estate and healthcare, it is sometimes the same thing. Like there's hospitals, right? And like for example, the Siloam Hospital Group under the Riyadis. So this is both a real estate play as well as a healthcare play, right? So understanding that gives you an edge in terms of how you present yourself, and you showcase that you understand the industry very well. So this is what I mean by knowing what you want to do, knowing your employer. And then finally, is on the required skill sets. So in banking, the most important one is actually not really finance. It's actually economics, because economics allows you to see and to find out whether or not I have the ability to understand where capital is flowing, right? So that is not something they teach you in finance. It's only something they teach you in economics. So you need to understand the demand and supply, what is really happening. If let's say there is more demand of certain goods, let's say for example, you know that buy now pay later, or like smartphone loans, right? In smartphone insurance, like you have Koala coming up, etc. Right? So these are the things that are hot, they are coming. What is the market size? So understanding the market size allows you to see what their potential revenue for the firm is. And then that allows you to also then estimate how much cash flows they need and how much money they have to grow and how much returns you have. So that's all economics, right? So I think that's important. Your corporate finance comes inside in terms of being a calculator, right? So corporate finance is a calculator. It is like this big TI-84, you know, Texas Instruments 84 calculator that you key in, and then do your regressions, etc., to find out whether or not how much money do you need in order to get back your investment, right? So that's corporate finance. And understanding management and business is important because you need to understand what the business model of the firm is. If you don't understand how the company makes money, it's very hard to decide how much money to lend to the company, right? Imagine if you are a Sinamas or you are a Mandiri, and then you want to lend money to maybe one of the groups in Indonesia, and you do not know what the business model is like, and you don't know how they're going to get disrupted maybe by a startup, right? Then it's very hard for you to really decide how much money to lend them. So that's important. And then business valuation is very similar to corporate finance. And then finally, statistics. Statistics is important because you want to see percentages, right? So percentages of maybe X number make it to this round, or X number managed to achieve this amount of revenues. That's important because it shows you what is the probability of success, right? So probability of success is usually not calculated in your financial models, but I would suggest that people add that inside, because if you don't add that inside, you do not know how realistic your entire model is. And then finally, understanding Excel. Excel is the most important part of banking. Because Excel is behind understanding corporate finance is a calculator. Excel is like your software that you use to calculate all these things. So if you don't know how to use Excel, I would encourage you to understand how to use Excel from the start. Because if you don't know how to use Excel, you only know how to use the press calculator, it will be very slow, right, for you to get the answer. So you need to understand how to use Excel. That is a very basic skill. Okay, so this ends my part on banking, and I think we can leave the questions for later. We'll just go into FMCG. All right, so for FMCG, FMCG really is maker of two words, right? It's fast moving and then consumer goods. So fast moving, what does fast moving mean? So fast moving means that it is something which is frequent purchases. You look at little effort to choose a product. It's low prices, short shelf life, rapid consumption, right? That is fast moving. So things such as like your Indomie, that's extremely fast moving. I eat like maybe 5 Indomie every week. Okay, I don't do that, or else I'll be bored, right? But then like Indomie really is fast moving because it is low price, people buy it a lot, you eat very fast, and short shelf life, right? Next thing is consumer goods. Consumer goods here refers to goods which are really not consumed by industrial, meaning not companies buy it, but people like you and I, anyone right along the street, they will use this consumer goods. So then this comes down to understanding why is it that the functions or FMCG are very into marketing, right? Have you asked yourself why? Why is it that they always look for marketing? It's because marketing itself is the one that will cause the FMCG product to do very well. So if I have a frequent purchase, little effort to choose product, low prices, most of these products are what we call commodities. Means that they are very easily differentiated from each other, right? So imagine if you take away Indomie, right? And then you have like other types of instant noodles. There's so many to choose from. How do I decide, whether this brand is better than this brand, right? So that's where marketing comes inside, where you want to use growth hacks, marketing spend in order to increase this, and therefore increase your volumes, increase your margins, and also have high inventory turnover. So that brings me to my next point, which is what are the main FMCG brands, right? And you find that there are quite a few, like these are the main brands, but then these are the mother brands, right? So meaning that under P&G, there's many other brands as well. So there's P&G, there's Wings, there's Mondelez, there's Unilever, RB, Reckitt Benckiser, Danone, Nestle, Indofood, Bayer. And so if you look at the next slide, these are the brands under it. So like Pantene, Downy, these are under P&G, right? Lifebuoy, Walls, these are under Unilever, right? You have Mi Sedap, that's under Wings, and then you have Cadbury, which is under Mondelez. You have like Indomie, which is under Indofood. You have like Nescafe under Nestle, right? So these are the main sub-brands under FMCG brands itself. So next time, if you go to the supermarket, right, or you go to the one of the mamak shops, you see that there are all the brands on there. And when you are there, when you look at all the brands, you want to look at and ask yourself, what is the parent company, right? Is it Unilever? Is it P&G, right? And then you find out how many actually are owned by the same company. Yeah. And then you realize that it is where two ways of success for FMCG is if you have a monopoly over a certain section, maybe like personal beauty, like skincare, or maybe shampoos, if you have a monopoly over that, or over like food, which is instant foods, like maybe your instant beverages and Nescafe or Indomie for instant noodles. So then this, you from here, right, you see that there is two types, right? There's food and non-food. So there's food, which is your packaged foods, beverages, like your Indomie, etc. You have your dairy, and then you have non-food, which is like your personal care, home care, consumer health, baby care, pet care, like your P&G, Unilever. So think of things like how you mop your floor, wash your clothes, how you clean your hands, how do you have diapers for your babies, baby brother, baby sister, or like maybe your pets, right? How do you care for them? These are the non-food kind of things. And then if you want to split them out even further, for non-food and food, so you have your processed foods, your beverages, which is under food, mainly dominated by Kraft Heinz, Indofood, Wings, and then also Unilever and Nestle. Then you have your non-food, which is mainly your cosmetics, your toiletries, your personal care products. So cosmetics, you have like your L'Oreal, your WADA, your Revlon, your Body Shop, your toiletries and personal care, which is very dominated by P&G and Unilever. So these are the ones that you can take note of. And then finally, going into the roles within FMCG, and maybe a bit of comments on how the MP programs look like and how you can apply for them. So there are 4 main roles in FMCG. First is the sales and marketing role. So you have the sales and you have the marketing. Usually it's split up. So marketing is people who, as what you mentioned, try to find out how to market, especially e-commerce, right? Setting up a last mall, a Shopee mall, selling all these goods there. And then you have sales. Sales itself is very focused on how you can actually convince maybe the Mamak store or like any other retailer to put more and buy more of your product, and where do you want to position this, right? So that's under sales. Then you have finance. Finance is basically trying to find out how can I make more money, right? This is important because you see that if I sell my Indomie is very cheap, right? But then how do you ask yourself, how do they make money? Their margins are not very high. So if they don't do properly, they might lose margin. So that's why finance is important. And then your operations and supply chain. Imagine going to like all the other plants in Indonesia, like just from Jakarta to Bekasi, right? Like imagine you need to go and transport things. Then like not to mention just Jakarta, the Surabaya, Kalimantan, etc. Imagine they all come from different supply chain ports. The supply chain, you're trying to find out how can I reduce the cost on supply chain. When I transport my goods from A to B, should I use trucks? Should I use trains? Should I use like a port, or should I even have what we call hub and spoke model, which refers to having warehouses along the way? How much warehouses should I need? And Indomie is easy because Indomie I can anyhow throw anywhere, right? And then don't need under sunlight, also fine, right? But then let's say if it's a dairy product, you only can have a short shelf life. You keep like the milk only for a short time. So you need to think about the cost of supplying this. I need to have like my cold fridges in my trucks in order to ship things. So these are what supply chain really covers. And then finally, human resource. Human resource is very important because you find that FMCG employs a lot of people, right? Imagine like one product, like P&G, they have like, I think 100 plus brands under them. Under 100 plus brands, imagine they have like so many other things. They need human resource in order to hire a lot of people for these roles. So that's where human resource becomes very important in order to ensure that they actually do well in this. And then finally, the last thing is the career prospect. This is really a heli view. I would say that there are 3 main things that are in Indonesia that are very popular, which is Unilever, the Future Leaders Program, your L'Oreal, which is your Young Entrepreneur Program, also Leadership Program, and Kraft Heinz Young Leaders Program. Usually it's around 1.5 to 3 years, after which you become a manager or an assistant manager, and then in one of the divisions. And then after that, around a senior manager, director, 5 to 10 years, and then vice president. Right, so that's really the progression of how your career looks like. But then I would say that for junior people, focus on the first 2 years on your graduate training program, and then do well in that. And then after that, you can actually progress in your next part of your career. Yeah. So hope everyone had a good understanding of what in FMCG as well as banking, and happy to take any questions.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Ben and Hafiz. I guess that's all for the industry. And kalau boleh saya sedikit sum up nih teman-teman, kira-kira tadi itu semuanya udah dijelasin sama Ben sama Hafiz. Kira-kira apa aja nih perkenalan singkat lah tentang industri karir seperti FMCG, banking, consulting, and also startup. Mungkin mereka juga udah jelasin apa saja nih role posisinya, apa yang dikerjakan, which is some of the position in the four industry yang paling diminati saat ini. Mereka juga udah sharing kira-kira apa aja nih yang kalian perlu siapin untuk bisa masuk ke perusahaan impian kalian. Nah, mungkin kita next will moving out to the Q&A session. I think kita udah dapat beberapa pertanyaan, salah satunya dari Danang. Maybe Hafiz and Ben could help to answer this. The question is, does the experience of working in FMCG industry help to switch into a consulting firm role later on? Okay.
Yeah, sure. I can take that. Thank you so much, Tana, for the question, and really appreciate it. Everyone could also ask their own questions. I'm sure not everything was answered today, right? Given the short amount of time, but we're here to add value to your learning. So please do ask these questions. To Danang, absolutely yes. So let's say you are undergrad today, and if you're thinking about going to consulting after graduation, and you're considering whether you should intern at an FMCG firm, then the answer is yes. FMCG is one of the most competitive industries to get in. So therefore, it's a signal that again you are able to compete with other students and achieve a position that is highly contested, and consulting will look favorably for that. Now, if your question is whether you want to pursue a consulting role 5 years from now, right? 5 years after graduation, then is the step to go for an FMCG firm to first as out of undergrad a good idea? I would say also yes, but keep in mind that it's a much harder transition then. Just because consulting firms typically hire people at 2 points of their career, either after their undergrad or after their masters. In between, it's a bit harder to transition across. So just be aware of that. So if you're going to FMCG now, the best way to plan your transition to consulting later is to then take a master's program. So I hope that answers your question, Tana.
Okay, itu answer for Danang question. I hope Els also can answer your question. Nanti kalau Danang mau ada pertanyaan lagi, boleh banget langsung raise hand aja atau chat aja di chat box. Okay, we moving out into next question from Maria. So Maria, as a student from planology, I don't know how to spell it in English, I guess. She want to ask about how's the funding management on the startup company based on technology things. Maybe Hafiz can go with this question.
Sure. Can I rephrase the question? Is it how does funding work in the startup space? Is that the question?
Yeah, mostly for the startup based on technology things. Yeah, technology startups like that.
Okay. Then the question is how are they invested in, or how are they funded?
How was their funding management compared to other maybe other corporate companies?
I see. Okay, so this is not so much as a question on the career in startup, but just how startups operate, which is we can go on 1 hour, another 1 hour on how to do this, to explain how startup funding works. Okay, but essentially, the entire premise of a startup versus other companies is that startups are meant to scale, right? So basically, a lot of the startups you see today, even the ones I showed earlier, even the unicorns, they're not profitable, which is very different from how a regular company runs, right? So if you think about a regular company, let's say any warung-warung, or as small as a warung-warung or as large as a state-owned enterprise, typically they make profits from the first or second year already. And that profits fits into then providing the salaries of the employees. Startup is different. A startup typically doesn't make profit even after the third or fourth year of existence. Gojek, Tokopedia, some of these folks are not even making any profits yet. So they're basically burning cash. So the idea here is that in the long term, maybe after 6 to 7 years, they will then become big enough for the cost to be low enough to then make profits later on. But otherwise, they are burning cash on a monthly or yearly basis, which is why you see a lot of these companies getting a lot of investments, because they need the investments. They are not run by profits. They are run by investments by venture capital firms. So that's why you see Gojek raising like 850 million US dollars, or Bukalapak going for IPO, or GoTo acquisition, and then going for IPO as well. These are because they require money from outside to keep the business running, in hopes that once later on they reach a larger scale, they will become profitable and more sustainable company. So I hope that answers the question in some ways in a very short amount of time.
Oke, thanks Hafiz. I guess itu pertanyaan jawabannya untuk Maria. Pertanyaannya mungkin itu pertanyaan lebih ke startup biasanya bakar uang gitu ya. Biasanya burning cash. They usually do that to have or maybe to increase their awareness first. I guess that's all for the answer for Maria question. Nanti kalau boleh ada pertanyaan tentang karirnya, mungkin tentang industrinya, boleh banget langsung ditanyain aja ke chat box. I guess moving into next question from Anissa. Anissa Nur Farida, mungkin Mbak Anissa boleh unmute mic-nya aja, mungkin biar lebih engage, boleh tanya langsung for your question. Please, Mbak Anissa.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, yeah.
Okay, I have a question about management trainee program. I much heard about it, but I don't know how it works, on what is it, and the difference between management trainee and another program. I mean, I always see in job seeker that they looking for management trainee, and also in the other hand, accounting staff or etc. So what does it goes, and then how does it works, and what the difference? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the questions. I guess maybe Ben can answer this question for the MT program, maybe specifically from FMCG. If we know about the MT program, maybe from Unilever or L'Oreal, we know about this MT program from that company. Maybe Ben can add more answer.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks so much, Nisa. So personally, I got into Unilever in their internship program, although I didn't take it up. So I got into the marketing program. So to go to the Philippines and handle one of their brands. So I think the important part about the MT program in, let's say, Unilever or L'Oreal or Nestle, Danone, is the main thing is that the process is quite a lot about teamwork. So they would test you about your teamwork and analytical skills. They call it the LGD, leadership group discussion. So I think that's what is happening, that they call it in Indonesia. And I think that's the main part in order to do well. I would say the focus on trying to create solutions and be analytical. Yeah, these are two feedback I'll give. Is it good, especially for fresh graduate? I think as this is something which Hafiz answered partly just now for consulting, being in FMCG is very good because it allows you to work in a company that gives a lot of resources. and you are able to make decisions on behalf of a billion-dollar business. So each like brand within Unilever, etc., these are all billion-dollar businesses, and you are the one making the decisions. So that teaches you how to make marketing decisions, supply chain decisions, etc., and this prepares you for the future. Yeah, so I think that is a multiplier effect, if you want to put it that way, of what the power of Menti program.
Okay, thanks Ben. Maybe dari Mbak Anissa, is that answer your question, or maybe you have something to add?
I think it's enough for me. Thank you very much, Mr. Ben.
Thank you, Mbak Anissa, for the question. I guess for the next question from Adit, Adit would like to ask, like, maybe we like, for example, like we never have an internship related to consulting, or maybe other consulting company, like a big one, maybe BCG or McKinsey, but we still they still have an internship experience beside the consulting company. So is it does it will help to stand out ourselves in front of the recruiters for consulting company? Maybe Hafiz can answer this question.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Adit, for asking the question. So I will say it depends. So it depends on what is exactly was that experience beside consulting that you have before you apply for a consulting firm. So as I mentioned earlier, it would help if your internship experiences is already competitive to begin with. So for example, if you've already interning at Danone or P&G or Unilever, and then you apply for consulting, then yes, it definitely helps. Another way that it could also help is if you're already interning at places where you work on strategy projects. So let's say you're a strategy and operations intern at a startup, even, that could also help you in consulting. What doesn't help is if it's just a completely unrelated internship and not in companies that are competitive. So let's say if you work at a marketing role in a small startup, then I would say that's not enough to be outstanding in, for consulting recruitment. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thanks, Hafiz. Adit, is that answer your question, or maybe you have something to add?
Yeah, it will be enough for me. Thank you, Mr. Hafiz and Mr. Ben.
Well, thank you, Adit, for the question. I guess kita lanjut ke berikutnya. I guess Mbak Tiwi, which is tadi di awal kan milih FMCG ya. Nah, after you hear the presentation from Ben, mostly for the FMCG, kira-kira masih pengen lanjut nggak nih ke FMCG, atau maybe you have changed your mind to other industry or maybe pathway? Boleh banget Mbak Tiwi kalau ada mungkin bisa sharing-sharing atau ada pertanyaan, boleh langsung unmute mic-nya aja. Thank you. Halo Mbak Tiwi. Oh, mungkin lagi nggak bisa on mic ya. Mungkin kita lanjut ke Danang nih. Nah, tadi kan udah nanya ya kurang lebih tentang FMCG sama consulting. Kira-kira setelah dengar presentasinya, maybe you change your mind atau mungkin bakal tetap nih ambil di FMCG. Mungkin boleh sharing-sharing sedikit.
Kalau saya sih untuk sekarang masih FMCG, cuman ada kemungkinan untuk switching aja.
Oh gitu, thank you Danang. Maybe do you have something to mau nanya lagi mungkin tentang CV, tentang interview, mostly untuk industri di FMCG?
Untuk sekarang sih cukup sih, udah cukup tadi penjelasannya.
Oke, terima kasih. Untuk teman-teman yang lain, jika ada pertanyaan mungkin boleh langsung ditulis di chat, jangan malu-malu, mungkin boleh raise hand juga, nanti boleh langsung unmute mic-nya. Jadi setelah kalian join webinar ini, nanti kalian bisa dapat kira-kira apa sih yang perlu disiapin untuk persiapan karirnya ke depan. Mungkin yang paling deket ini ada kampus Merdeka for internship, mungkin yang lagi final year mau wisuda nanti mau apply ke full time job. Nah, boleh banget nih teman-teman kalau mau nanya boleh langsung unmute mic-nya aja or raise hand first. Kayaknya pada malu-malu nih Bu, mungkin boleh dibantuin untuk tunjuk beberapa orang nih Bu.
Iya ya, ini malu-malu padahal mungkin yang mau bertanya banyak ya Mbak Cynthia ya.
Iya Bu.
Ya, kalau tadi sudah teman-teman sudah bagus sekali tadi Danang dan juga tadi ada juga tadi dengan Mbak siapa tadi sebelumnya?
Mbak Anissa Bu.
Dengan Anissa. Ini tadi kalau saya lihat juga tadi ada dengan Tiwi ya kalau nggak salah ya.
Iya di awal.
Ya, mungkin Tiwi ada yang mau ditanyakan? Ayo, nggak usah malu, mungkin ditulis saja di chatnya, nanti Mbak Cynthia akan bantu untuk translate. Ya, ayo, ini kesempatannya ini loh ya, jarang-jarang loh ya. Ini langsung dengan Benjamin dan juga Hafiz yang luar biasa, sudah tadi memberikan banyak sekali insight-nya yang mungkin kalau misalnya kita hanya sekedar baca mungkin nggak begitu paham ya. Tapi karena kita dijelaskan, jadi banyak yang bisa kita gali lagi. Ayo, silakan bertanya. Nggak usah malu, nggak usah takut. Dengan bahasa Indonesia pun juga nggak masalah ya. Yang penting apa yang ditanyakan, apa yang memang ingin kita ketahui itu terjawab. Kita nggak penasaran dan kita tidak kehilangan informasi. Ya. Tadi dengan Piwi, lalu saya juga lihat lagi, tadi kayaknya juga selain Dana, ada Aditya ya. Aditya ya, juga tadi sudah ya. Itu bagus-bagus sekali pertanyaannya. Mungkin yang lainnya nih masih ditunggu oleh Mbak Cynthia dan dan juga Hafiz. Ayo dong, mahasiswa Eka Unggul.
Mungkin sambil nunggu nih Bu dari teman-teman, mungkin pertanyaan dari kita aja ya Bu dari moderator.
Boleh, silakan Mbak.
Yeah, maybe Hafiz would like to answer this question from your perspective. How's is that really important for early career planning? But if we it's like if we already jump into one industry, like is that possible that we can start the career planning again from the first and then move into other industry?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, especially in undergrad, yeah, because you're still in the stage of experimenting. You're still in the stage of figuring out exactly what you want. And to be honest, it's best to do this now than later on, right? Because the cost is much lower, right? It's easy to quit an internship, or it's easy to stop an internship after 3 months rather than stop a full-time job after 3 months if you don't like it. So not only will I say it's this is common, but I think this is very encouraged to try and experiment with as many career fields. The only way you can really find out whether you are interested in an industry or not is to actually try it out. No amount of watching YouTube videos or going for courses will actually determine whether you would like in the industry or field. So yeah, it's completely fine to do that, and I think employers will also understand. Now the question is, now that I've established that it's actually okay to do that, then how do you transition? So the same answer applies. I think when I answered the question to Buria also earlier on, try to, when you're trying to switch industries or apply for industry that you are not specialized in, try to build your experience in other ways, like side hustles, side projects. Building a website could be an example of a side project. Going for case competitions could be an example of a signaling that you're interested in the field, so that you can smoothly transition from one specialization to another. So for instance, if you tried marketing but realize you don't like marketing and you want to go for strategy, then yeah, go for case competitions that are more strategy focused, for example.
Thanks, Hafiz. I guess it's also answer my question for the early career planning. Boleh banget nih untuk teman-teman, kalau mau nanya, boleh langsung unmute mic-nya aja. We will happy to answer your question. Oke, ini kita ada pertanyaan dari Tiwi nih. So, maybe Hafiz or Ben could help to answer this. Tiwi is asking about resume. So, how to make an ATS-friendly resume in the right way? Yeah, maybe you can share your tips and tricks to maybe a specific resume that maybe can pass to interview stage. Yeah.
Okay. So for those yang nggak kenalin apa itu ATS, ATS is applicant tracking system. So basically, a lot of companies use the ATS technology to automatically filter resumes based on how suitable they are for the specific role. Okay, so that is what ATS means. It's basically ATS friendly, then means that your resume needs to be good enough to then pass the filter to ensure that you don't get filtered out of the systems that a lot of large companies are using. So that's for everyone to understand what ATS is. Now, there are a couple of things to then create a ATS friendly resume. Number one, the format must be correct. So it needs to be readable by the machine. Right. So this means that you need to make sure that it's all the words on your resume is actually searchable and it's easily searchable. To make this simpler, all you could do is actually go to the Kinobi platform and you can actually create a CV for free that is already in ATS friendly format. But otherwise, there are a lot of materials out there on what exactly is this format. But in short, it needs to be readable by the machine. The second thing is that you need to make sure that the descriptions in your resume needs to match the keywords that the company is looking for. Okay, so what this means is that if you're applying for a marketing role, right, marketing and social media role, think of it from the perspective of the company. The perspective of the company, they will make sure the keywords are marketing, right, social media, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn. So these are the keywords that they will search for in your resume. Now, if you apply for these roles, you need to make sure that these keywords are inside your resume, because the less keywords that you hit, the more likely that you are filtered out and not in consideration for the role. So how you do this is you look at the job description of let's say you go to Campus Merdeka website, you look at the roles available and say ini Gojek social media Facebook marketing intern. Okay, social media marketing intern for Facebook or Gojek. So then they are looking for experience in Facebook ad purchase, for example, SEO optimization. Then you need to make sure that those keywords are exactly what is in your resume. If you don't have experience in let's say Facebook marketing, then here's what you do, right? You essentially go to YouTube, Coursera, and Google like Facebook marketing courses, even if it's just a short one, 1 hour, 2 hour, enroll in that specific course, and then put it in your resume. Say, pass basic certification Facebook marketing by Coursera. So this is how you get the keywords that enables you to pass the ATS machine for that specific role. So yeah, two things. One, the format must be correct. Then you can go to the Kinobi website to create your own ATS friendly survey. But second, more importantly, the content must be matching with the job description. And you need to do as much as possible to make sure that you have the right skills to match the keywords in the job description.
Okay, thanks Hafiz. Mungkin saya bantu sedikit ya untuk Mbak Tiwi. Jadi sebenarnya untuk CV yang ATS friendly itu yang mostly bisa lewat ke sistem trackingnya company. Jadi pastiin di professional experience-nya itu dimasukin benar-benar sesuai sama job description-nya. Jadi let's say tadi social media marketing intern di Gojek misalnya. Nah itu dia punya job, misalnya dia punya job description itu tulisannya mampu mempunyai Instagram account atau mungkin punya followersnya berapa atau mungkin pernah salah satu orang yang latar belakang edukasinya itu mungkin dari marketing atau dari business management. Nah, itu pastiin dimasukin ke dalam work experience-nya. Misalnya saya pernah menjadi yang biasanya kita kan kalau suka di divisi desain mungkin atau divisi marketingnya satu organisasi, nah itu boleh banget dimasukin ke sana. Kemudian mungkin formulanya you can insert the description and then the impact and also the result. Jadi itu bisa membantu sistemnya atau mungkin HR-nya lebih gampang nih sortir kira-kira review CV-nya. Oh ini kayaknya kandidat yang tepat nih untuk kita lanjut ke next interview stage. I guess itu untuk jawaban dari Mbak Tiwi. Mungkin dari Mbak Tiwinya apa ada pertanyaan lebih lanjut nih? Atau mungkin sudah menjawab pertanyaannya? Okay, I think there's no more question, Hafiz and Ben. After this, we will forward to introduction from Kinobi. I guess I can share my screen. Untuk teman-teman di sini pasti pada bingung ya, kira-kira apa sih Kinobi? Dari tadi Hafiz sama Ben udah mention what is Kinobi, what is our resume builder, what is the certification provide from Kinobi. So after this, I will share my screen and then we'll share more about the Kinobi. I guess teman-teman di sini boleh ke websitenya Kinobi nih kalau penasaran. Jadi Kinobi itu websitenya di platformnya app.kinobi.asia. So after teman-teman udah login ke websitenya, jadi tampilannya akan seperti ini di depan. Teman-teman boleh sign up pakai LinkedIn atau mungkin pakai Google. Nah, ini salah satunya saya coba sign in pakai Google, dan kebetulan saya udah punya akunnya. Nah, di Kinobi ini, di platformnya Kinobi, teman-teman bisa melakukan banyak hal ya. Yang pertama, kalau tadi misalnya Mbak Tiwi pengen buat resume yang ATS friendly, kira-kira kayak gimana sih gitu. Nah, kita provide semua tools yang ada di platformnya Kinobi untuk teman-teman bisa explore, bisa nanti misalnya mau apply di magang di kampus Merdeka atau mungkin mau apply full-time job di tempat lain. Nah, ini tampilan depannya akan seperti ini. Kalau misalnya teman-teman pengen untuk membuat resume, itu jadi ada resume builder. Ini salah satu sistem otomatis yang membantu teman-teman untuk membuat ATS friendly resume, which is udah pasti bakal di-approve, bakal lewat dari sistem ATS-nya. Karena personally saya sebenarnya udah coba juga apply ke beberapa company, dan itu tuh lewat ke interview stage-nya, which is mungkin teman-teman di sini boleh klik basic template, kemudian nanti teman-teman bisa lihat di sini ada sistem otomatis seperti mengisi Google Form, so you can just fill your name. Misalnya saya masukin nama saya Cynthia, di sini langsung di sebelah kanannya otomatis keketik sendiri, jadi teman-teman nggak perlu pusing-pusing lagi desainnya seperti apa, mau masukin apa aja. Nah, teman-teman juga bisa masukin di sini ada recruiter tips, jadi dari Kinobi nggak langsung lepas tangan, teman-teman kira-kira isinya gimana ya. Nah, di sini kita juga berikan tips and trick-nya untuk bantu teman-teman isi CV-nya. Selain personal information, kita juga punya experience, jadi teman-teman bisa masukin nih, kira-kira work experience-nya udah pernah kerja di mana aja, magang di mana aja, and then masuk ke educational background, mungkin teman-teman dari fakultas mana, mungkin bisa masukin juga GPA-nya berapa, jurusannya apa, mungkin selama di universitas, you guys have scholarship, ada beasiswa, itu juga boleh dimasukin. Nah, nantinya bentuk dari resume yang udah jadinya itu bisa langsung di-download dengan format PDF. Nah, mungkin ini ada satu bentuk yang teman-teman boleh lihat di sini, salah satu resume yang udah pernah saya buat di Kinobi Resume Builder. Bentuknya itu kira-kira seperti ini. Nah, mungkin ada bisa masukin foto, nama saya, short summary, professional experience, education, organisasional, pengalaman organisasi, sampai yang terakhir itu ada rewards kayak kira-kira kita pernah menang lomba apa, itu boleh dimasukin juga. Nah, ini bentuk nanti tinggal diklik aja di sebelah kanan ada download. Nah, otomatis download formatnya PDF. Mungkin itu untuk resume builder. Kalau teman-teman penasaran, oh kayaknya saya lolos nih, mau ada proses interview. Teman-teman juga boleh langsung ke practice question. Jadi langsung diketik aja, kira-kira teman-teman pengen nanya apa nih, kira-kira di interview mungkin bakal ditanya, why we should hire you, kayak kenapa sih kita harus pilih Anda gitu untuk jadi employee di perusahaan ini atau untuk dapat offeringnya. Nah, nanti teman-teman bisa langsung komen atau mungkin ask question di sini. Jadi ini seperti forum terbuka gitu. Nanti akan dibantu dijawab sama coaches yang ada di Kinobi. Jadi coaches itu adalah orang-orang yang udah emang kerja langsung di perusahaannya atau mungkin yang udah berpengalaman. Jadi dipastiin jawaban teman-teman pasti akan terjawab di sini. Nah, setelah itu ini untuk pertanyaan interview. Nah, setelah itu kita juga punya interview guides. Nanti mungkin teman-teman let's say lolos nih di salah satu company, mungkin di Tokopedia contohnya. Kita klik get started di Tokopedia. Terus nanti teman-teman bisa lihat di Tokopedia stage interviewnya ada apa aja, mungkin dari interview HR, interview manager. Nah, di setiap stage-nya ini teman-teman dikasih tips and trick, jadi bisa langsung belajar. Kalau pengen ada yang ditanya, boleh balik ke forum terbuka tadi untuk tanya di feeds. Selain interview, we also have another guides. Nggak cuma interview doang, teman-teman sekarang udah diperbarui, kita boleh lihat di sini kalau teman-teman pengen daftar scholarship, ada Excel Future Leaders, ada C Scholarship, mungkin Jarum Beasiswa Plus, itu juga udah ada. Jadi teman-teman kalau mau daftar beasiswa juga boleh banget langsung lihat di sini. Other than that, kita juga punya business case guides. Jadi teman-teman kalau misalnya lagi ikutan business case nih, mungkin di Student X CEOs business case, boleh ke sini, kita lihat-lihat sedikit, kira-kira guides-nya apa aja. Nah, teman-teman bisa praktis untuk bisa menang nih di business case-nya. Nah, mungkin ini salah satu gambaran singkat dari apa yang ada di Kinobi. Nah, kalau misalnya teman-teman juga misalnya pengen, kayak tadi dibilang sama Ben, pengen dapat satu sertifikasi yang bisa bantu teman-teman supaya lebih stand out nih di mata recruiter, tuh teman-teman boleh ke di sini ke virtual internship. Nah, nanti bisa lihat contohnya yang tadi Ben sebutin, investment banking. Jadi teman-teman bisa nonton videonya, nanti di akhir teman-teman juga bisa langsung aja isi kuisnya, and then you guys will have a certificate. Nah, sertifikat itu nanti pengalamannya setara sama virtual internship di industri itu. Nah, jadi teman-teman tinggal langsung masukin aja di professional experience-nya kalau teman-teman tuh udah pernah magang atau virtual internship di investment banking pathways. Nah, mungkin ini benar-benar interesting juga untuk teman-teman yang mungkin tadi bertanya kalau nggak ada experience gimana ya. Nah, boleh banget nanti langsung masuk ke sini. Nah, mungkin ini ada penjelasan singkat doang dari Kinobi. Nanti teman-teman kalau ada pertanyaan boleh banget nih. Kayak Mbak Nisa raise hand. Kalau ada pertanyaan tentang Kinobi boleh banget nih Mbak, kalau langsung mau ditanyain.
Siang Kak Cynthia, aku mau tanya, itu terkait apa namanya yang tadi yang lagi dijelasin ini, ya virtual internship ini dia free atau ada fee registration-nya ya?
Tenang aja nih Mbak Nisa, nggak ada fee sama sekali. Jadi Mbak Nisa cukup daftar aja, boleh pakai Google account atau LinkedIn account. Nanti ikutin kita nonton dulu. Jadi nonton dulu nih Mbak videonya. Kemudian di terakhir di series kedua ini Mbak Nisa bakal ada quiz gitu. Jadi kuisnya harus diisi. Kita kasih 2 kali, maksudnya 2 attempts, jadi 2 kali kesempatan untuk isi kuisnya. Nah, nanti bisa at least kira-kira 15 question lah harus benar. Nah, nanti setelah ini bakal dapat e-certificate yang langsung dikirim ke email yang Mbak Anissa. Nah, mungkin itu semua yang tadi saya sebutin itu akunnya free, jadi teman-teman nggak perlu takut, kita nggak charge apapun, teman-teman cukup daftar aja pakai akun Google atau akun LinkedIn. Mungkin itu sih Mbak Nisa, boleh kalau ada pertanyaan lagi.
Oke, terima kasih Kak, ngebantu banget ya, apalagi di kondisi kayak gini, kita kan nggak bisa mobilitas kemana-kemana juga, terus ada virtual internship ini benar-benar interesting sih. Thank you ya Kak.
Sama-sama, mungkin ini untuk teman-teman juga yang lain boleh kalau ada pertanyaan untuk Kinobi boleh banget, nanti saya boleh bantu jelasin sedikit kira-kira platform kita itu apa. Nah, mungkin selanjutnya kalau teman-teman misalnya lagi pengen nyari lowongan pekerjaan atau intern, kita juga ada job portalnya. Jadi ini adalah satu platform, teman-teman cukup one click aja, one sign up, one sign in, teman-teman bisa buat resume, belajar interview, sampai yang terakhir teman-teman bisa apply juga nih ke job portalnya. Jadi benar-benar kita bisa lihat prosesnya, progresnya gimana untuk lowongan pekerjaan yang kita daftar. Nah, mungkin teman-teman di sini ini sedikit perkenalan aja dari Kinobi. Mungkin boleh banget kalau setelah ini ada pertanyaan, boleh langsung follow aja di IG-nya Kinobi, kinobi.id. Dan mungkin kita would happy nanti ada adminnya yang untuk bantu menjawab. Mungkin segitu dulu nih Bu Ria untuk perkenalan dari Kinobi. Terima kasih untuk waktunya, udah dikasihkan kesempatan untuk Kinobi kolaborasi webinar sama Universitas Unggul. Kita benar-benar excited and will be happy if nanti teman-teman kita boleh onboard teman-teman masuk ke dalam platformnya. Jadi semoga benar-benar membantu teman-teman untuk mempersiapkan karirnya ke depan.
Ya, Mbak Cynthia berarti sudah. Oh, silakan. Ada yang mau bertanya ini sepertinya, silakan. Silakan Hilman.
Oh enggak, saya nggak mau nanya Bu, lagi buka kamera aja.
Oh, oke. Ya, berarti Mbak Cynthia, apakah masih ada lagi penjelasan lain atau sudah cukup?
Mungkin sudah cukup, setelah ini kita foto bersama dulu ya Bu.
Oke.
Oke, teman-teman jangan lupa isi absensinya, udah ada di chat ya linknya. Boleh teman-teman untuk buka kameranya dulu, kita foto bersama sebentar. Oke, kayaknya yang lain mungkin belum bisa open kameranya. Untuk yang halaman pertama, put your best smile ya teman-teman. Saya hitung 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Oke. I guess one more. 1, 2, 3. Oke. Terima kasih teman-teman, terima kasih juga Bu Ria udah memberikan kesempatan untuk Kinobi bisa hadir dan memberikan insight baru ke teman-teman untuk industri karir. Nanti boleh banget kalau ada pertanyaan lagi teman-teman boleh langsung lihat ke platformnya, dan mungkin next kita juga bakal ada kolaborasi juga dengan Universitas Unggul di beberapa kesempatan lainnya, so stay tune di Instagramnya aja. Terima kasih teman-teman.
Terima kasih Mbak Cynthia.
Oke, terima kasih Mbak Cynthia untuk semua yang sudah tadi disampaikan. Terutama saya juga mengucapkan terima kasih untuk Mr. Benjamin Wong dan juga Mr. Hafid Kasman yang sudah dengan luar biasa tadi menyampaikan materi yang sangat-sangat memberikan insight dan juga pencerahan lebih kepada semua mahasiswa. Dan ya kita akan berusaha ya untuk kedepannya kita akan bisa untuk memberikan lagi ya apa yang bisa nanti kita lanjutkan dari setiap, mungkin ada beberapa bidang-bidang yang mungkin nanti bisa lebih lagi digali lagi ya untuk lebih lagi bisa membantu mahasiswa untuk lebih paham. Dan seperti yang tadi sudah ada beberapa pertanyaan ya, itu menjadi satu hal yang juga baru dan juga mungkin bisa menjadi satu hal yang juga bisa membantu ketika nanti ingin mempersiapkan diri mengikuti program internship ya, baik itu di Magang Merdeka, Kampus Merdeka, atau di program magang BUMN, bahkan di program magang perusahaan-perusahaan multinasional dan internasional. Baiklah, terima kasih untuk setiap atensi dan pertanyaannya, dan juga terima kasih lagi untuk Kinobi yang sudah memberikan begitu banyak ilmu dan juga pengalaman ya, tentunya bagi setiap peserta mahasiswa yang hadir pada pagi ini. Mudah-mudahan webinar ini benar-benar bermanfaat dan juga lebih lagi mendapat juga manfaat yang membuat mahasiswa bisa lebih maju dan berekspresi untuk mempersiapkan karir di masa yang akan datang. Terima kasih Mbak Cynthia yang menjadi moderator pandu acara hari ini ya, luar biasa, sukses selalu. Dan kita ketemu lagi mungkin di sesi atau mungkin kegiatan yang akan datang ya, yang berikutnya. Terima kasih.
Oke, terima kasih Bu Ria. Sampai ketemu kembali.
Sampai ketemu, terima kasih.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Terima kasih. Thank you, Hafiz. Thank you, Benjamin.
Terima kasih. Thank you.
Thank you.